that back. Good to go. All right, good evening again. We are back in open session at 7:31 p.m. Item 7 on our agenda is discussion and possible action on items discussed in closed session. Is there anything to be taken up at this point? All right, then we will move on to item 8, discussion and possible action items. Item A is code/compliance policy and procedures. I'm not going to participate in this part of the discussion, so I'm going to back away. If someone else would like to run the meeting, you're welcome to do so, but I will not participate in the discussion.
Guess I'm at a bit of a loss since you're integral to the compliance policy and procedure. But anyway, I guess that would fall to the clerk to look to seek a nomination for a temporary chairman of the meeting. Is that right, Counselor?
Yes.
I believe I stepped over you on that the last meeting. I apologize for that.
Do we have a recommendation for a temporary sitting chairman?
I recommend Michael Dewar.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
So we have a motion and a second to nominate Trustee Durr to chair the meeting temporarily. Voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Have it as carrying 4-0.
All right, thank you, Mr. Clerk. So I'm not really sure why this is on the agenda. We have a policy in place that was passed back in January of 2015. Mr. President, are you going to remain up at the board, or are you going to step down?
Would you like me, I stepped down, I'll go sit
Well, I would think that that would be appropriate if you're not going to
Okay.
participate.
That's fine.
The procedure is in your packet. I don't, it's about a page and a half. I can read it if the trustees so desire. Essentially, if a complaint is filed, it's to be filed with the clerk. In summary, the complaint is to be reviewed by the, at the time, chairman and now president, and if he so sees that the property is likely to be out of compliance, then he signs the complaint, he or she signs the complaint, forwards it on to the building inspector for review. The building inspector reviews the complaint and the property if necessary, and whatever the case may be. And then with that, if there is a violation to be determined, then a complaint is prepared and to be sent out to the homeowner. Mr. Building Inspector, you're here. Are you here to address this issue? By all means, step up, because we're all at a bit of a loss.
So, I guess, long story short.
Just bring that mic up a little bit, if you will.
That's what I'm asking too.
Let me just, go ahead. Why don't you brief us on what this is all about today?
So, long story short, when we were approached at the time by Chairman Merrick, you know, to come in and give a proposal as a contracted inspection agency, one of the things that we did propose was tweaking the noncompliance. And in regards, it was to work hand in hand with the town staff. So we would be doing the investigations only. So we would receive the complaint, go out and do the investigation, take the pictures, we would turn that into the town staff at the time. They would write the letters, mail the letters out. They would keep all the documentation
Sure.
of the non-compliance. We'd hit the 30 days. I'd either get a phone call or an email from the town staff to do a reinspection. So then I would go out and reinspect the property. I'd give a report, and if they were still in non-compliance, the town staff would then send out the letters or have the citations issued. So it was kind of it was a group effort between, the building inspection and
Sure.
the town staff, for a few reasons. It's nice to have the town staff involved, with, the whole code compliance, non-compliance issue. And it helped, the code compliance is kind of a huge task, so it was nice to split the duties between myself and the town employees. So when we were contracted and then we started with the town in June 1st, 2017, we kind of worked through some of these things with Kathy at the time and Terry. And, if you went back and looked at the non-compliance reports, this was all kept by the town staff.
Right.
All this information. So you can even see in here, Jared will re-inspect, clerk requested inspector to re-inspect. So it was, like I said, it was a group effort between myself and the town staff.
Sure.
So that's, I guess, what I was hoping that we could still keep in place.
So there's probably a number of things that have fallen through the cracks as we've had turnover in the office portion
Yep.
of the staff. So maybe a quick review of this is appropriate, and we can iron some things out and get this back on the slate.
Sure.
So the first step is that all compliance inspection requests needed to be submitted in writing by a person, filed with the town clerk, and signed by the town chairman prior to the staff conducting a site inspection. If the person wants to be kept anonymous, then they shall be directed to speak with the town board member and request a town board member to write the complaint and sign it on their behalf. The town board members are not required to serve as the complainant for a person, but may do so at their discretion.
Mr. Dork, can I stop you on that one right there?
Sure.
First sentence is exactly what should be done. There were numerous times when the ex-chairman was chairman, John Merrick, he did send out the inspector and did not even have written complaints.
Well, I'm not gonna sit here and talk about what happened with John Merrick.
Well,
I mean,
if
he
we
hasn't been
had,
the president or the chairman in 2 years.
correct, but if we have any complaints or any non-compliance reports that are still out there, we should see if there's actually written complaints to them.
Okay, fair enough. But I'm sure that there's a significant number of complaints out there that have been made that have not been signed by our existing president. Because it's funny that this comes up, because I think it's a year ago right now that I asked him to prepare a report for all the outstanding non-compliant complaints that were pending his signature. And for several months, he committed to preparing that report, and to date, we still have not received that report. I understand that he stepped down for this. I don't know why. That's his own personal choice, but now we find ourselves in a precarious situation that he can't answer for that. But that request was made for me, and I believe it was the second meeting of February, coincidentally enough. I made it over and over and over again for months and months and months, because I continued to receive calls from residences who had made complaints in person with the clerk's office, and quite frankly, the current president was refusing to sign them. But I'm not gonna go back to if we have complaints out there now where there is no complaint that originate to Chairman Merrick, then by all means, we can look into that and reinstate that.
Well, that would be the first step I feel that we should do.
Well, that's fine. Do you have a specific complaint
No.
we don't have a non-compliant list right now.
No, but we should get a list.
Okay, I think we're gonna get to that down in the procedure, and I'm sure that Brandon will get on that lickety-split. I don't think this has been called to his attention previously. So that's step number one. Step number two is that the town clerk shall pass the complaints, if signed by the town chairman, to the building inspector to perform a field inspection. note non-compliance items, reference code sections, and take photos. Step 3 is the building inspector, if violations are found, shall give notice to the non-compliance, shall give notice of the non-compliance by certified mail service to the owner and/or occupant of the property, giving them 30 days to make corrections. Information required is property owner name and mailing address, address of the property inspected, date of the inspection, list of non-compliance items, corrective action to be taken, and a copy of the town code section being enforced. A copy of the letter and photos will be sent to the town chairman and town clerk. And obviously in every section here, that would be village president now and the village clerk, but we can get this updated. Step 4 is prior to the 30-day requirement, an extension may be requested with an appearance before the town board. Step number 5 is a follow-up inspection is done after the time limit expires. If not in compliance and time has lapsed, the issues will be referred to the sheriff's deputy for a citation to be issued. Once a citation is issued, the matter is deemed to be in court and will only be addressed at the request of the town attorney. Step number 6, a report from the inspector will be forwarded each month to the town chairman and the town clerk by email with a status of non-compliance files. Step 7, the town clerk will bring each month a non-compliance report and files to the town board meetings for review for the sole purpose of advising town board members on the status of the matters. Step number 8, if the property becomes non-compliance within 6 months after being brought into compliance, the issuance of citations shall be commenced by the sheriff's department without the necessity of prior notice being given. Step 9, any staff deviation from this procedure will be cleared with the town board beforehand. And then it goes into the contract, and that's about 11 pages long with inspection services, so we don't need to go into that. So, other than what was noted by Trustee German, which we can review the current non-compliance issues to make sure that there is a complaint on file, and if not, then we'll address that. And then I would ask that Clerk Bledsoe get up to speed on the former reports. They were in a very nice format that we got used to. Certainly, if you would like to tweak that format, I think the board would be open to that. But I don't think there's any gaps in this process.
Well, when we originally came in as the potential inspection agency, we worked with Chairman Merrick and Kathy to change some of this policy, and that's why it was written in our contract that we would do the non-compliance investigations, but not, you know, from like halfway through note 3 down would be handled by the staff. So it's in our contract that we would do the investigations, but that's it.
Well, I didn't read your whole contract before this, but this is the policy before the
I know, but
board.
that contract was approved by the town board.
Perhaps, but then
Reviewed
we'll
and-
need to
and-
update this policy to match that contract.
Right.
So
And
what
I
is,
think that's what we're looking to do, is just find out. So in October, I received a stack of non-compliance.
got
Did my
it,
investigations, turned them over to the president, but there was kind of a loss because the staff had changed, so our normal procedure was kind of out the window.
well, and there's a
now-
loss because,
And I don't agree that's what your contract says, and you know that, and we've written a letter and it's in the packet.
oh,
You can say that that's what your contract says, but that's what we're here about.
well,
Correct.
very
Well,
good.
that's what it does say.
Pardon?
So could you give us some input on this?
It's in my letter. It's a personally confidential letter. It's in your packet.
Yep. I'm sorry, I didn't get to
It goes
that.
on and on about the ordinances and the policy and the contract, and that's the rub. He negotiated one thing, and the policies and the ordinances and the contract say something else.
That contract was approved by the village, or the town board.
Okay, well, we're not gonna get into that right now and have this discussion between
Sure.
you
I
and
mean,
the
and
attorney.
I don't want this to go south. I mean, I enjoy working with all of you and I have no issues, so it was a very smooth, policy and a very smooth, you know, the whole non-compliance thing, working with Terry and Kathy and everything was very smooth. You know, I would do the inspections, I'd turn it in, they would keep the reports,
Yep,
you know, it was, I just, you know, it was a very smooth thing. Staff was involved, I was involved, we worked together.
So the attorney's letter is 4 pages, and I'm not gonna waste everybody's time while I sit here and read it now, and then I would have to compare that to the contract, so I apologize for that. If somebody else has input who did read it, I'd be certainly open to discussing that, but otherwise, we could table this to the next meeting.
Well, some of the issues here are, why they haven't been done is because there is a difference of opinion here as to how it's supposed to be handled. Isn't that correct, Jared?
That's exactly correct.
Right.
I
That's why-
understand.
But this is why you said in the beginning, you're talking about none of these complaints have been handled, but this is the kind of the reason why they haven't been handled, because there's a conflict here as to what to do with it.
Well, no, that's not true, though.
Because the ordinance says one thing and their contract says a different.
No, I understand that part of it, but the issues that I have with them not being handled is they're not being signed by the president. And he has refused to prepare a report for me that he committed that he would prepare for me on all of the open issues that he has received but hasn't signed. That's step number 1, and that's not being done, and that doesn't have anything to do with Jared's contract.
Is that true?
But
I mean, what's the holdup here?
The only complaints I've received that have been signed off were, from Mike Borchard.
I mean, step number 1 of the policy is all compliance inspection requests need to be submitted in writing by a person, filed with the town clerk, and signed by town chairman prior to staff conducting a site inspection. If the person wants to be kept anonymous, they shall be directed to speak with a town board member and request the town board member write the complaint and sign it on their behalf. The town board members are not required to serve as the complainant for a person, but may do so at their discretion. So what I contended at the very beginning of this discussion is we have many non-compliant complaints from residences that have not moved off that first step because the current president refuses to sign them and refuses to provide a report that he committed he would do, and that has nothing to do with the
Well, I guess
town
that's what I'm
inspector,
asking.
with the village
Is
inspector.
there a reason for that?
I don't know, he
The
recused
reason-
himself, so now we can't ask.
Well, I guess that's kind of the bottom line here, isn't it?
Well, no, that doesn't have anything to do with the building inspector.
Okay.
The ones I have received, I've done the investigation,
Yeah.
I've got pictures,
The
I've got
ones that are
files. It's
signed?
just, the reports haven't been written because that's what we had I guess the disagreement on, where
Right.
it gets handled after that.
Okay.
But the ones I have received are, they're ready to be sent out, they just need letters and, the investigation.
So some have been signed then, in other words?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think I have like 6 or 7 of them or something.
Do you know how many more there are?
signed by whom?
No idea.
Okay.
Signed by whom?
Village president.
'Cause I thought you said the only
You
ones
just said that you
signed
didn't
was
have
signed
any
by
from-
Borchard.
No, yeah, but they were written, they were written by Mike and signed off by the president. Those are the only ones I have. So I don't know how many more there are.
So he has been doing it then, Mr. Dorr, right?
Well, there's many that he hasn't because I get the complaints about them, and you've complained about them too. The last time we talked about this months ago.
Well, let's
was
get that put together, have Mr. Bledsoe put that together.
Mr. Bledsoe put what together?
Which ones have written
He wouldn't have any
complaint-
record of them.
Have written complaints. Well, there should be a record of a written complaint.
Well, that would be nice, but I'm pretty sure that they're not here. Because I asked the last clerk to look for them and they were gone.
Oh,
I can provide you with the ones I have.
Well, those are the ones that are signed. I don't think that those are in contention to what we're referring to. So anyway, would we like to table this to try to understand the disagreement between the town attorney and building inspectors and table this to either the next meeting or the second meeting in March, whatever is the pleasure of the board?
The disagreement is, I don't know where he says, I mean, if he wants to tell me where I'm wrong in my documents, he's saying they cut a different deal,
I understand that.
so you're not gonna resolve it between he and I.
No, I'm not
This is
gonna
a
try to
policy.
resolve it between he and I, but I'm gonna look at what your comments are and look how they relate to the contract. I mean, I
he's
feel
gonna
I
say-
owe it, I at least owe it to you and to him to come a little better prepared next time. Unless, you know, if the board wants to settle it out now and make a decision, then so be it.
I'm not suggesting that.
Nor am I. But it's up
I'm
to the
just trying
pleasure of the
to-
board.
I'm trying to narrow what the real issue is.
Yes. The real issue, as I understand what I'm hearing, is that there's a disagreement between the contract that the board signed and the policy that's currently in place.
No. The policy, in my opinion, the contract and the ordinances all read the same.
I understand.
He cut a deal outside of the contract, the ordinances, and the policy,
Well-
claiming that the staff was going to do some of what he's contracted to do.
And that was negotiated with Chairman Merrick. I mean, I'll be honest with you.
So
we-
let me ask you this.
that's one
I'm
thing-
not disagreeing with you. I wasn't there. I'm just want to make sure they understand what they're looking for when they read it.
So let me ask you this question straight out then.
Yep.
Does the policy and your contract agree?
Our contract says that we would do the non-compliance investigations.
Okay.
So in my opinion, it doesn't. I mean, we do the investigations,
So
and we've been doing the investigations.
You feel that his comments, the contract, and the policy don't all agree?
Correct.
So he doesn't agree with you?
Okay.
That's fine.
I mean, it's,
Okay, we're gonna have another rub here, but, because you're talking about a deal that was cut.
Well, I don't care,
outside-
listen, I don't care about the deal you cut with somebody else.
Well,
that's
that's
not
what this
here.
is all about.
Well, but,
and it wasn't a deal, it was talked about, it was written in our contract that way, so that we would do the investigations.
all that matters to me is what's in the contract versus the policy.
Yeah, it says non-compliance investigations.
Okay.
So, in my opinion, like, anything from step 3 down would be a step.
I get
level
it.
thing.
But with all due respect, I'm not gonna take your word for it.
Okay,
I'll read the contract, I'll
Sounds
read
good.
the attorney's comments, but whatever deals you cut with somebody else who's not even here anymore, isn't gonna
I
matter
don't feel
to
it was a
me.
deal, I mean, it was a good conglomeration with the staff level and us to make sure the non-compliance got handled in a very efficient manner, a very timely manner. Cause I'll be honest, if I get a stack of 25 non-compliance, it's gonna take me a long time to go through those.
Well,
write
hopefully
letters.
you won't get that big of a stack.
But I'm just, so this way, I don't do the inspections, I'm out in the field, I turn it into, the clerk, she'd write the letters, it was a great thing, and that's why we had it written that we would do the investigations.
Okay, you take a look. I'll make a motion to table this to, wait, no, is it, well, do we want to take the next meeting, or do you want to wait until the 25th? Are you okay waiting till the 25th? It'll be a shorter meeting.
Yeah, I mean, it's up to you
'Cause it
guys.
won't have the
Entire-
plan
up to-
commission.
Up to you guys.
Okay,
I mean,
so I'll make a motion to table this to the meeting on March 25th.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second, no discussion on a table. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
thank you.
Thanks for coming in, Jared, I appreciate it.
Okay, we will continue with item 8B, which is fire/EMS billing study rate. I think Chief Buchholz is going to make a presentation to us, is that correct? Welcome, good evening.
Good evening. Back when we were doing budget, we talked a little bit about billing. The clerk and I had a meeting with our billing company, got a little more educated about billing. And
Can you just pull that microphone up a little bit? We really, people with masks on and stuff, it's really hard to hear, and particularly for people who aren't in the room. So shout it out, please.
all right, is that better?
Yes.
So I took the opportunity to review our billing rates. Our billing rates haven't been reviewed in over 8 years. So I put together for you a spreadsheet which includes most of the billing rates throughout the county. As you can see from that, our billing rates were substantially lower than everyone's, which creates a little bit of disparity, and obviously that's some lost revenue to us as well. Then we have an arrangement with Vernon with paramedics, and we do transports back and forth more often with them than anyone. We cross boundaries and transport patients from other community or from their community. Likewise, they transport some of our patients. So Chief Feldy and I looked at this, and we came to the conclusion that it might be a little more fair if we raised our rates so that they were comparable to the Village of Vernon, who we work very closely with
Can you
paramedics.
speak just a little bit louder, Dan, if you can? I'm concerned that people aren't able to hear you. Please.
So Alex Feldy and I looked at our rates, and my recommendation to the board is to raise our rates and make them the same as Vernon's so that we kind of eliminate some of that disparity. So it doesn't matter which community transports, the folks all get the same bill. Likewise, it brings up our rates to a little more in line with other folks in the county. The rates that are proposed put us pretty much in the middle. We're not the lowest, we're not the highest, we're pretty much in the middle, we're right about the average. The last line on the spreadsheet indicates the averages there. Alex did prepare a little letter and sent over. He supports what we're doing. It just makes things a little bit simpler, eliminates some complaints that we get, and I think it helps out our community substantially.
Questions, comments?
The legal comment, I just have to remind you that the law requires that there's a justification. You can't have a fee that exceeds the actual cost of providing the service, or it's an illegal tax. And I have no way of knowing, I have no way of knowing if that's the appropriate fee or not the appropriate fee. I just gotta remind you what the law is.
So that's where I had some questions. My first question would be, was there any talk of Vernon meeting our rates instead of coming down instead of going up?
Yeah, they have no intentions of doing that.
Okay. So,
Just say that again a little louder, please. I hate to quit pestering, but I'm just really concerned that people are not able to hear what you're saying, Dan.
Vernon is not going to come down to our rates. Alex said that would not happen.
okay, fair enough, but I thought I'd ask the question.
Yep.
So these rates go up anywhere between 50 and 650%. And before I could support something like this, I'd like to know at each level what our cost of service is. And that would take some work, because we have 9, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Well, there's 10 categories and then 2 for transport. So if we leave the transport portion off of it, because there's 10 categories, you'd have to do some work to look at, well, that's further consolidated down to 5 because BLS is BLS, whether it's a resident or non-resident. So really there's 5 categories, and then each one is further subdivided into 2 for resident and non-resident charge. It would be interesting to me from a legal point of view, how we can charge 2 different rates if we can only do cost recovery. But before we get to that question, I'd want to know, what did BLS support in the village cost us last year? And to know that, we'd have to do some legwork to, look at how many BLS runs did we do? What was the cost of each run? we'd have to, look at how many people were on the run, and then, divide that by the number of runs, and then find out, figure out a reasonable cost recovery for the cost of the ambulance and things like that. And I'd be looking for that for BLS, ALS, ALS2, no transport, and then each of the 5 categories, so.
Mike, would you be willing to work with the chief on that?
Well, I guess I thought that Trustee Stigler was already kind of working with the chief on budgetary issues. It would seem to be that that's where this would fall.
Okay. Okay. What, maybe a question for John here. Do you have a template or recommendation for him? How do you determine the cost of each of these service events? I mean, do you put, what do you put into that to calculate that cost?
Well, I have seen some show what their actual cost of supplies and labor and depreciation of the equipment, cost of the equipment. I'm gonna be honest with you, and I know we're in open session, but I'll still be honest. I've not seen a lot of studies. I've made this warning and I've made this concern, and a lot of people say, well, we're in the middle, so we should be safe, because if anybody sues us. But the chief was probably aware there was litigation in the village of Pewaukee over these charges. And in that case, it was pretty easy. They had a contract with the city of Pewaukee, and the cost was $1,500. And they passed that cost along to the person, and the person complained, and they said, this is a no-brainer. We get a bill from the city of Pewaukee, and that's what we're charging you. So they didn't have to do much of a study in that case, as I understand it, because, and this was all played out in the press, so I'm not telling anybody anything that wasn't. I follow this issue very closely, because as these costs go up, I'm concerned that more and more people are gonna come in and say, where's your study? Where
Well,
can you justify it?
And the people aren't gonna do it, the insurance companies are gonna do it. Because they're the ones footing most of the bill.
Well, but they usually have a cap.
Well,
If it's Medicare, we have to take that, right, chief, and we can't charge more than the Medicare cap. And the insurance company doesn't care if you get higher than, what they pay, they just pay what they pay, and then your fights with the resident to get any unpaid amount from the insurance company. So yes, if the insurance company has an unlimited dollar amount, but most of them, I think, have a cap, chief, correct me if I'm wrong, that they say we pay up to blank and the rest of it, if it's not Medicare, where you say we will accept the Medicare payment and not go against the recipient. But in the other cases, they say we'll pay the $800, $900, whatever their max is. If it's higher than that, your issues with the recipient of the service, right?
I mean, this might be incredibly simplistic, but if we look at the cost to, and incredibly simplistic, I don't remember what your total budget is, chief, but if you look at the total budget to operate the fire department, I understand maybe fire has to be parceled away from the EMS part of it, but we're doing far more runs with ambulance or EMS. But I mean, if you look at that, and Brandon maybe has that, what did we recover last year from Three Rivers? I don't try to make a quiz of that. Wasn't it less than $100,000 or not? And I mean, it's costing us how much to operate the fire department? Do you need a more detailed study than that? I mean, can we take the entire cost of labor, which is the biggest component of all, to run the fire department, and parcel part of that out against the ambulance and EMS type of thing? And I mean, you could do that justification in about a half a page of paper, couldn't
well,
you?
but this is really kind of a cost accounting 101 exercise.
All right.
So we're only
School me.
talking, excuse me?
I said, go ahead, school me.
Well, we're only talking about ambulance runs, right?
Correct.
Okay, so however many ambulance runs we had, divided by all 5 categories, that's your cost per run for the ambulance.
Well, I guess, Mike, I'm gonna go at it a little bit differently. Is the cost just the cost of the
No, that's not what I
ambulance
said, you
run?
didn't let me finish.
No, I'm not.
Okay, I can cut to the quick on this.
Please, do.
There is no law that I'm aware of that says you have to parcel off this or parcel off that, or you can't take the entire budget. It's just you have to do a study to justify it. If you wanna take the entire budget, you know, you might be able to take the higher budget. And then all that's gonna be done after that's done, however you decide to do the budget, whether you parcel out paramedics from EMT, from ambulance, or you just take the whole thing as you suggested, Mr. President, and then you do the analysis, and then the only challenge is, was the concept reasonable from a budgeting standpoint? I have a community, it's not a secret, that charges a very large building permit fee, a very large building permit fee. And you know how they justify it? They have a 24/7 police department, 365, and their police department drives the driveways all day long, and they guard those sites that are being built. And they justify the large building permit fee because a portion of the police department fee is allocated to building permit, and that justifies the very high fee, and I think that's perfectly legal.
Okay, well,
Because they've laid out how they justify that fee. Does that make sense? You aren't gonna find a template or anybody who says, the absolute way you have to do it is blank. I told you that the way the village of Pewaukee did it.
And what I'm saying is, it doesn't make sense to me to take the approach that says, okay, you know, here was an ambulance run, here was simply the cost for labor to do that ambulance.
But that's not what I was
and the cost for gasoline.
saying.
I understand that, but I'm thinking we can take a bigger, simpler global picture, and this is an easy thing to justify. That's my perspective.
so then all the people who have ambulance services are gonna pay for the ladder truck and the 2 tanker trucks and the engine and all of that? And the guy who had the big fire down on Oakdale, that all?
No, I said if you want to separate the fire, simplistically the fire from the ambulance or EMS type of thing, I don't have a problem with that, but I don't think it has to get any more complicated than that.
But then how do you charge one rate for a BLS, one rate for an ALS 1, another rate for an ALS 2? I don't have a problem doing that approach if an ambulance call is charged as an ambulance call. But that's not what's presented in the material. I mean, if you're gonna have one.
You'll have to tell me what some of those are, and I might be able to answer you how other communities have done them. I apologize. I know that the one that you said we're gonna exclude, which is, I think, the transport, if I'm correcting.
Well, he's got this broken down
Yep.
into 5 different categories.
Yep.
BLS, which is basic life support, ALS 1, ALS 2, no transport, and no transport with treatment. Those are the 5 major categories. And then each one of those categories are broken down between resident and non-resident.
The resident versus non-resident, I can answer, because if you show that you're not covering all of your costs, part of your costs are being paid by taxes, and your residents can have a break because they pay taxes.
Okay,
Okay, that's the answer and how you, but if you go to the whole 100% and you recoup the whole thing, you wouldn't necessarily be able to justify the break for the taxes supplementing a portion of the cost. Okay? So that's how it's done, right? Chief's shaking his head, he must go to seminars on this, and they tell him how you can charge different for residents than non-residents, right? Because they're your taxpayers.
Can I interject something real quick here? So the next item on our agenda is going to be an update on the Shared Services Committee, Joint Planning Committee. The Shared Services Committee, which is with the Village of Vernon, has requested our representatives from the meeting get together and meet. And I have a very, very strong feeling that this would be on the agenda of what they're going to want to discuss, correct, Chief?
Yes.
So I think if we don't get any further with this tonight, there will be more information that our members and I believe all board members would be welcome to attend very, very soon.
Okay, gentlemen, where are we at? Does that give you some direction, Chief?
Sure, sure.
As I hear Trustee Ollie saying, is some justification for the amounts that you're charging.
Yep.
Something that
Yep.
we can point to if someone says, how did you get to that dollar amount?
Absolutely.
And
Got
if it's
it.
not covering your whole 100%, that's your reason for charging less for you know, and the only other caveat, there's 3 caveats. What's your study? Could be very simple, as you suggested, Mr. President. Then, what's your, show that you haven't covered, part of it's covered by taxes, that's your justification for resident versus non-resident. And the third one you asked about is what's the distinction between the categories? And I would think that goes down to what you're paying the personnel that are actually providing the service. Am I wrong on that?
Well, it's the type of personnel you got. Basic life support, you get a basic EMT. You
Right.
get to ALS service, you get an advanced EMT, or you get an intermediate, or you get a paramedic. You go to advanced life 2, and you get paramedics that are doing chest decompressions and intubations. You know, so it's based on
So I was right, it has to do with the personnel, and so
And the
that's how
skills
you
they
justify
provide.
the higher rate.
And the
is
skills they
Because they have
provide.
a higher education, you're paying them more, the cost to provide that service is higher, because you need more bodies, more people, more education,
Correct.
more payroll. So, I hear the president saying, I don't need all kinds of great details, but I need some kind of simple study. Is that adequate for you, Mr. Dorr?
Sure.
Does that give you
Let's-
the guidance?
Yeah, let's do this, we can kind of wrap it up. The concept, and we can talk a little bit more about it in shared services, and I'm sure Chief could go on it at great length and talk about how, and I had somebody ask me a question, we have, I guess I will say, worked reciprocally, maybe poor choice of words, but with the former town, now Village of Vernon, how long have we had a reciprocal municipal aid relationship with them for fire and EMS? Can you tell us how long that goes back?
Well, before I was born.
So it's at least 30 years ago.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so,
We've had this arrangement with the use of their paramedics, though, for the last 5 years.
so we have been, if you will, sharing services, working cooperatively with them for many, many decades. Is that, I'm gonna try to put words in his mouth, is that a fair statement?
That's true.
So we want to continue this, so just the concept, and I think, Mike, you know, some good questions there about justification numbers. I mean, I would like to thank the chief, and I think that Chief Feldy did some of that. I mean, he went to a significant amount of effort to put together the spreadsheet to show comparables for what other municipalities are doing. I think that's a good frame of reference. Appreciate doing that. The concept, if we are going to continue to work cooperatively and share services with our community neighbor, the Village of Vernon, in concept, does it make sense to be charging the same rates for these services? It's a big picture question. We did have a little bit of a discussion. In fairness, Trustee Stigler and I met with Chief Buchholz and with Brandon and with Chief Feldy, discussed some of this about a little bit, and I don't make it simplistic, but if we were not providing the same type or level of service, to me, then there could be a justification for having different rates. If we're doing the same type and same level, same quality of service, same response type of stuff, does it in concept make sense to have the same rates?
In my opinion, when we discussed it, like you said, with the chiefs and things that day, they're coming into our territory to do their services, and they only get paid our rates. So to be fair to them, what is the incentive for them to keep doing that?
I don't know that that's accurate, what
It
you
is.
just said.
Is that an accurate statement, Chief? You want to expand on that?
If they come into our territory and treat a patient with paramedics and transport with us, they get nothing.
But if they transport,
If they transport, they get billed at their rates.
right,
If we transport, if we go to their community and transport their folks, they get billed at our rates.
right.
So they
So
get a
whoever
break
is the
if we go there.
transporting entity is the rate that's paid,
Correct.
right. So if they come here and do
Right.
the transport, then they get their rate.
But when we use their paramedics, they get nothing.
I understand that.
I guess that's what I was thinking wasn't fair.
So that's part of a more expanded discussion, and that,
Correct, that's-
I guess suggesting can continue. And again, Brandon mentioned we're gonna be talking about shared services committee. I guess I won't ask that question any more time, but at least to some of us, there was a thought that to have the same rates for two communities that are closely aligned, working cooperatively together, providing the same service would make some sense. What amount of time do you need to provide the information that's requested to basically be able to provide something to justify the rates? I think, is that where we're at, Attorney Macy, basically, simplistically? Mike, is that where we're at?
Well, I'm hoping I can do that in a couple of weeks. I mean, I'll work on it right away.
So, I mean-
in a month?
I don't know if I can have it done
Well, you're
tomorrow.
here,
I'm in the middle of training with
need
the new
more than that?
software.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm in the middle of training with new software. I know I can't do it
Give us,
tomorrow.
give us what you think you need.
I would say I could have it done in 2 weeks.
well, you're here for the plan commission meeting anyway, so.
Right.
Okay. Does somebody want to make a motion then to table this with that directive to the chief? Or request?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, is there a second?
Which meeting date?
Next, the
The
plan
next-
commission, first one next month.
Is that March
Fourth?
11th?
I don't know the date. March 11th.
I'd like to do the shared service date in between this also, if possible.
Prior to that, is
Be
that
prior to
what you're
the next
saying?
meeting, correct?
Yeah. Is there any reason this couldn't wait till the 25th for just a board meeting instead of waiting
Yeah.
through plan commission?
Can we do that? Anybody object to that?
No.
Well, I won't be here, but
Okay,
that matters.
I'm fine with the next meeting if we can get the shared service committee meeting in before that meeting also.
Wouldn't that kind of be up to Vernon too, though? I mean, arrange
Well,
that.
if Trustee Durr and Trustee German, you're the two representatives, get me a couple dates that work for you as soon as you can. I will get it to Vernon. I'll work with their clerk, and we'll work with Chief Buchholz and Chief Feldy, and we'll get it scheduled.
then I'll move, and if it's not ready, we can do otherwise. I will move to table this motion for further discussion, consideration, possible action to the meeting on Thursday, March 11th, and I so move.
I'll second.
We already have that motion effectively. I mean, just step on that.
Yeah, you can have it.
You got it, all right. It was here and here. Trustee Stigler, Trustee German, that's the motion. All right, everybody understand it? All in favor, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you very, very much. Okay, we are on to the next item. On our meeting, which is, hang one second here, agenda. Item number 8, C is update on Shared Services Committee and Joint Planning Committee. We tiptoed into that, but Brandon, you want to explain that, please?
Sure. President Fisher asked me to put this agenda on and share with you the minutes that were taken by the Village of Vernon clerk. The Shared Services Committee meeting minutes were from Monday, September 14th, 2020 at 7:17 p.m. And the unapproved proceedings of the Joint Planning Committee meeting from Monday, September 14th, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. It doesn't make sense for us to take any action on it since we weren't really the holders of the meeting, but more for an informational so that you can see because you have not seen these minutes as from what I've heard from these meetings.
Well, they shouldn't be out here in they're not approved minutes as of yet, so they probably shouldn't be out anyway. We've only had one meeting, so we couldn't possibly have approved the minutes, but I don't know that we
I asked
should-
Brandon to put them out there simply for informational purposes.
Well, I don't think it's appropriate to have unapproved minutes out for informational purposes or anything else. I mean, why would we
Okay.
do that? For a board meeting that you're not even a member of.
Okay, what's next?
That's all I have.
You're going to set, the Village of Vernon asked to have a shared services committee meeting, right? So we can work through that. Okay, anything further on that? If not, we'll go to item 9, authorization to pay the bills, which you have before you. We're gonna take this in 3 parts, I believe. Brandon, why don't you just explain what's before us and give us the numbers, and then we can get a motion, please?
All right, so you're gonna have 2 runs of bills. One is the standard and normal monthly bills as we look at each month. There is the Rupert and Milk bill in there. The second batch you have are the property tax overpayments that were received for property tax season. I figured it would make sense to have those kind of separated since they're standard bills and non-standard bills.
Do you have a preference for which one of the 3 we deal with first?
The pleasure of the board.
Okay, somebody like to pick one of those first? All right, I will move to pay the reimbursement for property tax bills in the amount of
$85,851.33.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second the motion.
Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Stigler.
Aye.
Dur.
Aye.
Fisher.
Aye.
German.
Aye.
Kalinsky.
Aye.
Okay, next motion. Payment of the regular bills. Who would like to make the motion to pay the regular bills in the amount of? I hear trustee Kalinsky wanting to make that motion, is that right? Maybe not.
Is that the 128,455?
It would be 121,488.44.
That's minus the record Milky bill.
$121,4844.
121,488.44.
Okay, is there a second to the motion to pay the regular bills in that amount? I will second. The motion was by trustee Kalinsky. I second it. Pay the regular bills in that amount. Roll call vote, please.
Dur.
Aye.
Fisher.
Aye.
German.
Aye.
Kalinsky.
Aye.
Stigler.
Aye.
Okay, and one more motion for the payment of the record Milky bill in the amount of,
$6,967.07.
So moved.
okay, that was trustee Dur. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Trustee German, roll call vote, please.
Fisher.
Abstain.
German.
Aye.
Kalinsky.
Aye.
Stigler.
Aye.
Dur.
Aye.
All right, if there isn't any further business to transact, a motion to adjourn at 8:24 PM would be in order. I'll make that motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by trustee German. All in favor, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes 5-0. We are adjourned at 8:24 PM. Thank you, and thank you everybody who is watching remotely.